how you handle conflict. This really takes skill, it takes experience. And no matter what happens, as you rise up with your experience potential and your experience level, as you go through life in different jobs or the same organization, how you handle conflict, you'll learn different styles and techniques that are going to help you. Here are some very specific tips that are going to help you. Start paying attention to this chart. This chart is it looks like a sheet of paper, and that really is what it is. On the one side, you have the level of assertiveness. Yes, you will do it my way. Yes, no matter what. You have that. And I'm serious. There are people that talk like that. Then you have about how much cooperation you have on the other axis. You have one axis about assertiveness, and then you have another one over here about cooperative. And so we divide this into the 4 quadrants, with the one in the middle all about compromising. But let's talk about the extreme fringes. And sometimes you have to use each one of these in a different way. The best solution is always problem solving. You'll see here, problem solving is in the assertiveness and cooperative aspect. So in problem solving, it works best when interests are not perfectly opposing each other. There's a level of trust. The issues are complex, but the problems, it takes time, and then information between each other helps increases everybody's power, and you all rise together and you can solve the problem. It works really well if you have strong personalities. It's no big deal, provided you're focusing on the task at hand and you're not anything that fits that problem. That way the problem's on the outside and you're working as a team to solve it. Forcing, okay, sometimes on the forcing, let me back up to the chart here, you'll see it's on the high assertiveness level. So forcing, we're gonna do it no matter what. It's almost like a bulldozer drops their front blade down and drops it down. I'm going full speed ahead. You pull back on the throttle and the machine launches forward, crushing everything in this pathway. Sometimes you may have to do that because you have to decide that fast and no time for a committee meeting, and you have to just go forward. And the problem is that you may have to pick up the debris afterwards if you still survive the war that comes after that. So forcing with a quick resolution, it works, but your position has to be very strong and have a huge moral foundation to it. The problems it causes, there's a relation conflict. That was my turf. You weren't doing it and it had to be done. Long-term relations, every time that happens, he always does that or she always does that. Just depends on what it is. I don't trust her at all because she did this to me. And sometimes people hold grudges for years, decades afterwards because of one act that you possibly do. Then you have the avoiding. Oh, I don't want to do this. And I have to be real clear with you. People, when it comes down to the forcing, a lot of people, they will always back off. People often are afraid of conflict. So if anybody asserts themselves, a lot of people, they'll just kind of back up because they don't want to be involved and they don't want to deal with that kind of a personality. So they're avoiders. The conflict, well, I don't really want to deal with that. What do you think we should do? And you'll have that. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but the problem is that person, especially if they're in leadership, may get rolled over by somebody, including somebody underneath them, and have the other person's will imposed upon them because they want to avoid any kind of conflict. They're survivors. Sometimes they're the smartest critter that's around because of the fact that they're avoiding all that conflict. And after all the dust is settled, they're the only one surviving, that everybody else got fired in the process. If they avoid dealing with the conflict, it remains unresolved. And I've seen people do this, and I backed off and let them cope with it. A lot of times, time just has the conflict resolve itself. Somebody has to make a decision. They do this, and it gets solved, and it kind of goes away. But other times, it doesn't go away, and it comes back and damages everybody that's around it. But often the person that doesn't make the decision that should have, sometimes they says, well, so-and-so did it, and sometimes it comes back to bite you personally. So then yielding. Sometimes if it's not important to you, I'm not going to die on that hill. Okay, then you have to sit down and just back up a little bit and let somebody else be in charge. And sometimes that's kind of a give and take. Sometimes there is a time to yield, and other times to take a stand. You have to decide, is that hill worth dying on when the battle comes? And the answer sometimes maybe not today. Okay, if they want more power, let them go after it. But the problem is, once you're given once, they'll be used to being in charge and running over the top of you. So be careful on this one, even though there might be an easy way to resolve things. really compromising is the very best thing. It's best when there's a single issue, when there's a lack of time for problem solving. This compromising, it really comes down to the aspect of, can you live with this? Well, I want to do this, but the question is, can you live with us if we do this? It's a matter of coming together and trying to find a way to solve something. And it's not always the best way, but on compromising, sometimes everybody gives a little bit, and you have this sense of community in the aspect of, okay, suboptimal, but everybody wins, and we can all work with this aspect of it. So pay attention to that. A lot of times also you have cultural differences. You have huge cultural differences as to how we're brought up. I'm here in California, but I come from the Midwest, and frankly, a lot of things in California are very different from the value system of the Midwest, as well as from the Deep South, as well as from France, as well as from China, as well as from India. Everything is different culturally, and you're always looking at things through different glasses, and you need to try to look through other people's glasses in the process of seeing, how are they seeing this over here? When I put these glasses on, oh, this is the French version. Okay, and you have to stop and listen to their aspect of where they're coming from on it. And sometimes the things that we think are the most important are not to them, and sometimes the vice versa also. So pay attention to what's going on. Gender differences, men use the forcing style a lot more, and women tend to use the avoiding style. Really, women are more inclined to problem solve and work as a group than men are. Now, you can't make these generalizations too much, because I've seen a lot of men do an awful lot of compromising, bringing things to closure, and I've seen some very, very women that push the forcing style. So you can never make one overall judgment. But basically, looking on a big overall picture, women tend to be more collaborative in their style of management, and men tend to be more forceful. But be careful about making the generalizations, because it is not always true, and never use that word. Sometimes our approach, you have to sit down, and here's 6 different steps as to how you really approach the conflict management. Emphasize the overall goals. What is your focus on the goals? Okay, and keep that forward. Sometimes if you have a meeting, you need to bring that forward, and this is our objective. Reduce the differentiation. Sometimes you have to back up, where you think everybody knows all the different issues. Sometimes they don't, and you go back. Okay, let's go back and start at the beginning. Okay, are we all on board with this? And you go through over here. Then you come over here, and then you may go back on a historical basis and take time. Sometimes this depends as to how big the group is and how much the experience level is. You may have to go back and spend a meeting or two just reviewing the history before you get to the point where everybody's on the same page in agreement as to where the problem came from, where the roots are. And keep in mind that, let's go back to what problems are. The hardest thing to do is to define the problem. That problem is sitting there, but sometimes we're seeing things on top of it, and we're focusing on that, but not seeing the actual problem that could be down over here. Sometimes you must go back to resolve conflict to what happened periodically and where you are today. Improve the communication. That aspect of the differentiation also is about the understanding. Reduce the interdependence. Let people sit down and have their own world, and get people to back out of different turf. That really helps an awful lot. Put a buffer between them. Increase the resources. So much conflict is over resources. And then clarify the rules. Okay, who's doing what? Who's that? Sometimes you call it a swim lane. You need to get back in your swim lane and swim in your lane, and I'm going to be in my lane over here. So get out of my lane over here. Clarify the rules and define what lane that you're supposed to be in. And these 6 steps will help you on a good, solid, structural approach to conflict management. I recommend you put these down in your notes, not just for this class, but also for life, because of the fact that here are 6 candid ways to deal with conflict. Problem solving, really the best way is always cooperation. When people force things, they're viewed as heavy-handed. When they avoid things, they look indecisive because they're seeking harmony all the time. Sometimes you yield if it's not important to you. Compromise, it's suboptimal, but you can live with it. When you deal with conflicts, sometimes you want to emphasize the goals, reduce the dependence of your department on somebody else's, and vice versa. Reduce the differentiation between people so you have a common core and a common history. Improve communications. Increase resources, throw money at it. It always works. And clarify the rules. Handling conflict, if you can master this, you will be viewed by a lot of people as being somebody unique and special and talented because you're comfortable around you and they like your style. With that, sometimes they don't because of the fact you're too popular, because you do solve problems. So be cautious on that one too. Sometimes people like conflict. It helps them cover up what they're doing. So always handle conflict and keep in mind the focus. The focus is organizational success. Take care.